Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're tackling a huge paradox, a real contradiction at the heart of South Africa. You've got this modern, incredibly capable economy, but at the same time, it's struggling with one of the worst youth unemployment crises on the planet. And to unpack this, we're going to be leaning on a key report from the United Nations Development Program.
So yeah, that's the big question we're digging into. How can a country that's a continental economic powerhouse, with a sophisticated financial system, also have millions and millions of its young people completely locked out of that success? It's a contradiction that really defines South Africa's modern story. You see, these two realities, the powerhouse economy on one side and the widespread youth unemployment on the other, they didn't just happen by chance. Nope. To really get why they exist side by side, you've got to go back. You've got to look at the historical blueprint of the nation's economy. I mean, how it was actually designed right from the start.
Right, so let's get into the roots of this divided economy, because the origins of today's crisis, well, they were no accident. The division we're seeing was deliberately, systematically engineered. So let's take a look at the framework that put it all in place. So here's the blueprint. The report calls it the Pentagon of Development, and it's built on 5 pillars: race, rail, gold, maize, and war. Think of it as this interlocking system. Everything, mining, farming, the railways, it was all powered by the forced labor and the total exclusion of the native population. This system absolutely forged South Africa's industrial strength, but all the rewards, they were funneled directly to a tiny select few.
And this quote, wow, it just perfectly captures the thinking, the ideology behind that whole system. That idea that you should limit people's opportunities by design. It wasn't just a belief, it was written into law. The Bantu Education Act systematically, deliberately denied the majority of people the skills they'd need to actually participate in the very economy they were being forced to build with their own hands.
And the outcome of all this was, well, it's jarring. Look, normally when a country industrializes, it uses its huge young population for growth, right? It's called a demographic dividend. But in South Africa, that's not what happened. The benefits of all that progress were intentionally kept for just 9% of the people. The other 89% left out by design. Okay, so that's the history. But what does that blueprint, that legacy, actually mean for young South Africans today? Well, that history isn't just history. It's the fuel for the crisis they are facing right now, a generation on the edge. The scale of this problem, it's honestly staggering. When you compare South Africa to its peers, the other BRICS nations like Brazil, Russia, India, China, it's a massive outlier, a dramatic one. The unemployment rate there isn't just high, it's in a completely different league. And if you drill down into that national crisis, you find another layer of deep inequality. Young women are hit the hardest. They face this huge 17-point gap in just participating in the workforce compared to men. And this isn't a new thing. It's a deep structural barrier that was there long before COVID ever hit. But then the pandemic. It just took a terrible situation and made it so much worse. When the job losses came, women accounted for a staggering 2/3 of them. 2/3! This didn't just stop progress in its tracks, it actually threw it into reverse, making an entire generation of young women even more economically vulnerable. So we're not just talking about numbers on a chart here. The report is really clear on this. This isn't just an economic statistic. It's a full-blown crisis of social inequality. It's something that directly threatens the entire country's stability and puts it at risk of creating a lost generation. But okay, despite how grim all of this sounds, the report doesn't just leave us there. It makes a really important pivot. It starts to identify key opportunities, a path forward that could create a totally different future, but only if the right actions are taken, and taken now. All around the world, the very nature of work is changing. The old ways, the old industrial models, they're giving way to this new digital era. Now, for a country like South Africa, this huge technological shift is both a massive challenge and a really unique opportunity to kind of leapfrog some of these old, stubborn problems. And this is what people call the Fourth Industrial Revolution, or 4IR for short. It's this fusion of technologies like AI, robotics, the Internet of Things, all of it. So the really urgent question is, can South Africa grab hold of this revolution and use it to finally break those old destructive patterns? Can it create growth that includes everyone instead of just repeating the mistakes of the past? So where are the jobs going to come from? Well, the report points to a pretty clear path, something called Industries Without Smokestacks, or IWOS. Basically, these are modern, service-based sectors. Think finance, business services, tourism, even high-tech agriculture. And here's the kicker. These sectors created almost three-quarters of all new formal private jobs between 2010 and 2018. That's huge.
And this isn't just some theory, right? This potential is real. The report tells the story of an agro-entrepreneur named Michael Muktime. This guy didn't just start a farm, he built a whole local ecosystem around it, with training, mentorship, and jobs for other young people in his community. It's a perfect example of the incredible ripple effect you get when you empower young people in these new growth sectors.
Okay, so the opportunities are there. How does South Africa actually seize them and finally resolve this paradox we've been talking about? Well, the report lays out a pretty clear blueprint for action. It's this five-part agenda for action, and it's ambitious, but all the pieces are connected. See, it's not enough to just invest in new skills for people. You also have to support the entrepreneurs who will create the jobs that use those skills. And you can't do that without the right infrastructure, like a stable power grid and universal internet. And all of that has to be managed by a capable state that is laser-focused on creating policies that lift up the most vulnerable people, especially young women. And that brings us right back to the central question. Can South Africa unite these two starkly different realities? The potential is there, the path forward is pretty clear, but what the report really hammers home is a message of urgency. Resolving this paradox and making sure there isn't a lost generation, well, that's going to take decisive strategic action to finally build an economy that serves all of its people.